Hi, good afternoon. I'm Gurchaten, Nanoo. My pronouns are they, he, and I'm the Director of Programs at ILGA. Unfortunately, I'm the last person that stands between you, especially those who have been here since 8 in the morning, and a good glass of wine. And it actually makes sense for ILGA to go last as well, because what I like to call a bottom down or a top down approach, if you put civil society at the top and then work our way to us at the international level, it makes sense for us to go last as well. I'm going to share my screen in a minute. For those who don't know what ILGA is the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Trans and Intersex Association. We were founded in 1978, and I'll share my screen in a minute, but I'll come back to that. It's okay. So I'm going to show some slides. We were founded in 1978 in the UK when approximately 10 activists across Europe, at that time mostly it was in fact all men, that came together to campaign on decriminalization of homosexuality. Now, what we see across the world, and what is very, very evident, is that as ILGA has grown now to over 2,000 members in 170 countries, we have 6 regions. We have ILGA Europe, which was one of the first regions. We have Pan-Africa ILGA, ILGA Asia, ILGA Oceania, ILGA Latin America and the Caribbean, ILGA North America and the Caribbean. And ILGA North America and the Caribbean and ILGA Latin America and Caribbean. The Caribbean is divided into 2, depending on the language. If it's Spanish speaking, it goes with Latin America and the Caribbean. And it really, as an organization, what is at the heart of our organization is queer democracy, or democracy in action. And that's even more important today now when we see anti-rights and anti-democratic actors threatening the very principles and foundations of our society. Now, as ILGA has grown, and that is no coincidence, as ILGA has grown as membership, and it's down and rooted to the strength of civil society. And so we're really proud to be here today, and we want to thank Mojust for reaching out to us and partnering with us and with other ILGA World partners, as well as our own membership here present in today's conference and sharing their testimonies. So as I was saying, ILGA's it's no coincidence that as ILGA has grown, so has civil, and that has been down and rooted in civil society strength at the local level. Where civil society has grown stronger, ILGA has become a stronger foundation. So we would not exist without local level civil society organizations. And it is thanks to donors, including the City of Geneva, that strengthen local civil society then to engage at the international level. But what is concerning is that when LGBTI organizations don't engage in the international level and do cross-border dialogue, that's where we see anti-rights actors become stronger, right? So we really need to reinforce this global approach in working together as well. Now, what I'm going to do is give you 2 examples of how ILGA works. Now, all of you know our research, but maybe none, or some of you have experienced our UN work as well. But what I'm going to show you here is our ILGA World database. Just see if it's working. And then I'm going to share my screen here. Is that the one? Sorry, it's not working, is it? Let's go back. Oh. So here we have the ILGA World database, for those who know it. And what's very key is this is, one of our flagship tools that has been there since, I think, the early 80s. What started as what was then called the Pink Report, then became the state-sponsored homophobia report. And it even have letters dating back to the 80s, where we would, the 1980s, where we would write to missions here in Geneva. In fact, I think there was one letter, Shadi, there was one letter written to the Iranian mission asking them to clarify the Iranian laws on criminality in Iran. And we have records and evidence of this. Now, the database is divided into 6 areas, and one of the main ones that you'll all be aware of is this one here, which is the map, our famous map, looking at criminality across the world. and looking at criminalization by law, de facto, and do not criminalize. This is the situation as we stand. Now, in addition to this, what's really interesting is the key, if you look at criminalization of same-sex consensual activity between two consenting adults, and looking at legal barriers of freedom of association, as it loads, you'll see that there is a correlation there. We don't know if there's causality, but there is definitely a correlation. And it goes and it makes no surprise that for us, working on the freedom of association is critical. Therefore, having strong civil society at the grassroots level is critical for our movements as well, as we have seen. And in light of that, what we have also seen is, if I go back to criminalization, is that over the years, we have seen decriminalization go down. Hopefully that will load up in a minute. Sorry, didn't realize it was slow. We do have a very strong firewall on our database because we get attacked thousands of times a day. So it may take a bit of time as it loads. Yeah, so as you can see, decriminalization going down, and we're now standing at 61 countries right now. Now, at the current rate of progress, we're still looking at two countries decriminalizing a year. So it will be at least till 2060, 2070 that we will not have global universal decriminalization. And again, it's no surprise as civil society gets stronger, as the ILGA regions get stronger, as we have more membership, that the rate of decriminalization goes down. Again, I'm not claiming causality, but there is definitely correlation there as well. So in addition to that, what we also do is provide this data, which is critical to empowering our communities at the ground level, at the local level. In addition, we have one of the areas that we also work on is UN treaty bodies. So this goes into our UN work. So I'm just going to click there. And so we have a team of UN team dedicated here in Geneva. Some of you may already know them. They actually work on some of the international human rights mechanisms, be that on the Universal Periodic Review, on the treaty bodies, special procedures, and the working groups, as well as now in the SDGs. Now, again, what you will see here is some recommendations by years. You see this sort of peak happening in the 19. And I think there's a lot of information there, so I'm just going to scroll. Yeah, so you see here sort of a peak of 73 recommendations in the Human Rights Committee in 2018, and you slowly see it going down. And it's no surprise that at that point in time, there was a lot of political activity going on in the world, especially when we see at a point when anti-rights actors were on the move and have been. So many of our members and civil society actors, not just LGBTI organizations, use this data to guide their advocacy work and strategize their advocacy work at the local level as well. So hence why I say it's really a bottom-up or a top-down approach, depending on how you look at it, where civil society data is leading the way. And what's been driving this for us is here is the ILGA Monitor. This is one of our latest tools. I don't know how many of you are researchers or have access to this, but this is a tool that we use to extrapolate data through media to actually examine the cases. Because as Shadi even mentioned earlier, it's very hard to obtain data on LGBTI prosecutions across the world. So where do we go? Do we keep that line open? Before it was, receiving old faxes, letters of this case or that case. But now with technology and AI, we're able to scan the internet and pick up data points. And then we sort through them and tag them. And that then forms into a report that we call Our Identities Under Arrest, where we can look at laws that prosecute us on the grounds of same-sex criminal consensual activity, as well as other laws such as cross-dressing laws, on sodomy laws as well. I think the other one is morality laws as well that was mentioned earlier. So this tool here is available behind a firewall and only upon a request as well, because we know that a lot of this information here is what our detractors will definitely want to have access to. So another way that ILGA World works or does its advocacy work is through strategic litigation. So I'm now going to focus on our UN program and give you two examples. The one most recent example is the case about two trans women and LGBTI defenders in Paraguay that began their transition process and affirmation of their gender identity in their childhood. They suffered discrimination, violence, and harassment, and they were forced to drop out of school. The lack of recognition of their gender identity reflected in the inconsistency of their personal documentation. With the viable expression of their gender identity and their feminine name, exposed them to acts of discrimination and degrading treatments in the public and private spheres, and to the mistrust of their legal relationships. Paraguay does not have a legislation against all forms of discrimination that includes sogiesque among the protected categories, and has already been observed for this by the Human Rights Committee, as well as other treaty bodies, as well as by the Universal Periodic Review. Despite this, the state's commitments on this matter have not been fulfilled. So comments have been made by the Human Rights Committee as well as other treaty bodies, but Paraguay has not done anything about this. Paraguay does not have legal gender recognition, LGR, that allows transgender persons to access a quick, transparent, and accessible procedure to change all components of their identity under civil registry, including the name and sex with which the person was registered at birth. Iran, one of our transgender defendants, and I apologize for sharing this, has survived 2 assassination attempts since the early 2000s, when she began to speak out against police abuses. Despite being hit by 3 projectiles, she has survived. These crimes were never properly investigated and remained unpunished by the state. In 2016, the defendants initiated a legal action to legally change their names. Paraguayan law recognizes that all persons can change their names, invoking a fair cause to the judicial system. They obtained a favorable resolution at first instance, but then the Ombuds's office appealed. The 2 cases are pending appeals before the Supreme Court of Justice, the highest judicial instance in the state, and yet it has not been resolved. So due to the lack of justice in Paraguay, they've decided to bring their case to the Human Rights Committee, the monitoring body of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as you know. The subject matter of the complaint is the request for trans persons to be able to change their name in accordance with their gender identity before the courts of Paraguay. The prolonged and unjustified refusal of the national judicial system to rule on the request constituted a simultaneous violation of multiple rights recognized in the covenant: equality before the courts, fair trial, recognition as a person before the law, privacy, and non-discrimination on the basis of gender identity. So now talking about the case and the strategic litigation. The Human Rights Coordinator of Paraguay, I'm going to pronounce this badly, is Code UPI, is the national network of CSOs for the defense of human rights, and it's made up of 39 member organizations. This group is representing the complainants. Code UPI led the campaign, Soy real, mi nombre de ser legal. I am real, my name must be legal, which seeks to address the lack of legal gender recognition in Paraguay. This campaign involved collaboration with international organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. Fellow colleague was here from Russia, was here earlier, and various grassroots organizations. How have we been involved? Well, ILGA World has provided CODUP with technical support with the cases submitted before the Human Rights Committee particularly on the existing human rights standards on trans persons. As part of the strategic litigation, at ILGA World, we have formed an alliance with TGEU, one of our members, and GATE, which is not an ILGA World member, and we drafted an amicus curiae, a third-party intervention, to provide technical information on trans persons to the Human Rights Committee to help them judge in favor of the petitioners and in line with human rights standards. We've covered the following topics in our amicus curiae: the concepts of legal gender recognition and its connection to the name change procedure, the current state of international and regional human rights law, convening legal gender recognition, a comparative approaches to LGR globally and in different regions, particularly Europe, and suggestions for specific reparation measures aimed at preventing future violations. Other organizations as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and Justica have also submitted amicus curiae briefs as well. These groups have focused on other topics such as the Inter-American Human Rights Standards on LGR. So what are the expected outcomes? We hope to guarantee the rights of trans persons to adjust their civil name to match their gender identity, ensure that Paraguay adopts legislative measures on legal gender recognition, establishing a simple, fast, transparent, and administrative procedure for all trans persons. These cases will have far-reaching global implications, as well as be the first decisions by the UN treaty bodies on the recognition of trans identities. This is very important, particularly now when we see that the multilateral, that various elements of the human rights system is under attack by anti-trans and anti-rights actors as well. We've seen this in the CRC, in the Committee on the Rights of Child, as well as in CEDAW as well. So when these cases will allow the adoption of landmark jurisprudence will have impact on the recognition of trans people rights on a global scale, favoring greater protection on trans people in states that do not have effective regional and or human rights protection systems in place, such as Asia. There is no regional human rights courts there. Now, the other area we also work and engage with human rights procedures or in the international human rights mechanisms are special procedures. And I'll give you another example here. From November to December 2022, the Special Rapporteur on Cultural Rights, Ms. Alexandra Santaki, conducted a visit to Germany to understand how cultural rights are implemented in the country. During her trip, Ms. Santaki met with LGBTI groups in Berlin and in Cologne with the participation and support of ILGA World. These meetings brought together LGBTI human rights defenders, artists, activists, performers, academics, and cultural managers working on a diverse range of topics and different communities. The Special Rapporteur had the opportunity to listen to these groups' works, as well as their lived experiences and perspectives to learn more about the challenges and opportunities faced by LGBTI people living in Germany, including LGBTI youth and BIPOC individuals, and those with refugee and migrant backgrounds. The presence of the artists, such as a drag king, further enriched these meetings as some were able to show their art and perform for the Special Rapporteur as well. Regarding ILGA World's role in this project, we first identified the upcoming opportunity, the mandate in loco visits, the visit to Germany, and contacted the mandate expressing our interest in engaging in person. Afterwards, we contacted ILGA World members in Germany and shared the opportunity with them. Various organizations contacted us expressing their interest, including LSVD, CSD Berlin, BV Trans, Cologne Pride, and Anyway Cologne. The mandate shared information with us regarding their agenda and cities that they were planning to visit, and we had preliminary meetings online. At the end of the visit, there was a mission statement immediately released after the mission, and the expert commended the state's support of forward-looking initiatives and stated that recent successes on promoting LGBTI rights could act as a guide for further excluded groups, including migrants and persons facing intersectional discrimination. In February 2024, the mandate issued their final report on their visit to Germany, which included a section on LGBTI persons with various recommendations. And then since that country visit, ILGA has continued to engage with the Special Rapporteur, who has become very vocal about LGBTI rights, including recently her report on sports and cultural rights for LGBTI persons, where she has been very vocal for her support for trans and intersex persons in sporting and the sporting field, as well as her other visits to those as Chile. And we've engaged with other special rapporteurs, such as the Special Rapporteur for elderly persons as well. And of course, One of the other ways that we take global advocacy further is the independent expert on discrimination against the grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. The current mandate holder is Graham Reed. We as ILGA World work closely and actively with our members as well as other human rights organizations to ensure that the mandate that we've worked so hard to obtain remains in place and continues as well. And in fact, this year we'll be starting our campaign work and advocacy as the mandate is up for renewal next year. So with that, I thank you very much again, and I thank you again to Mojas for this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I can have only one question because we're running out of time. Just after that, we are going to meet in the park nearby, so we can continue our chat there. Yes, please.
Merci. La question, c'est direct. Une question. On peut poser une question, mais j'aimerais poser une question à M. SANDHU et deuxième pour Mandicourt. C'est la question. On a ILGA World, ILGA Suisse, ILGA Turquie, ILGA Brésil. Si on n'a pas un pays formel comme Kurdistan, comment on peut créer ILGA Kurdistan ou ILGA palestinien? Ça, ce n'est pas une question politique, c'est une question de besoin. Pourquoi? Parce qu'une femme trans qui est assassinée en Kurdistan, Irak, dans une ville de Mossoul, Kurdistan fédéral, ad hoc, le 28 janvier 2022. Par exemple, on ne voit pas cette information dans le rapport de ILGA World. Comment on peut créer, ou par exemple, j'ai deux amis, il y a une femme trans qui est kurde et son partenaire qui est palestinien, aujourd'hui ils sont à quart, par exemple, ILGA World, comment peut nous aider pour ces gens, on peut créer un espace de sécurité pour eux. Ça, c'est une question pour vous. Et c'est la deuxième question pour M. Mandicourt. Plutôt, on voit en Suisse, c'est un modèle, ville de Genève, qui soutient incroyable pour la communauté LGBTQ, par exemple, et aussi pour la communauté LGBTQ réfugiés, comme vous soutenez l'asile LGBT de Genève. C'est la question dans le centre fédéral d'asile et dans tous les foyers en Suisse. Nous, en tant que les personnes récurrentes d'asile LGBTQ, réfugiés LGBTQ, on vit la menace physique, celle psychologique par notre communauté même et aussi par la sécurité de foyer. Moi-même, j'ai vécu en foyer à Meran, 6 sécuritastes qui sont entrés dans ma chambre 6 heures le matin. Et il y a des exemples comme modèle à Vienne, à Berlin, le centre fédéral, ce n'est pas centre fédéral d'asile, mais comme un centre hébergement temporaire de Rainbow à Berlin, à Vienne. Est-ce que vous avez une idée, comme à Genève, créer un centre fédéral Rainbow pour les personnes que requérant d'asile LGBTQ? Je ne parle pas sur les personnes réfugiées LGBTQ, parce que quand tu as permis B, tu peux y aller chercher un appartement. Et pour un modèle comme ça, comment vous pouvez... j'ai une idée de comme ça. Est-ce que vous êtes ouverte en tant que ville de Genève? Et la dernière chose, moi, je voulais traduire ce livre en anglais et en français et je voulais faire collaboration avec vous. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Those are really good questions. I think where civil society, where there is a lack of, we have ILGA organizations in 170 countries, and one of the countries that we do not have, there's many countries around, I'd say 20 or 33 countries where there's no ILGA members. However, there are organizations like Six Rung, Iraqueer, that are operating as LGBTI organizations for those countries and covering those. So what we do is provide support and training to those organizations on how to develop evidence, capture data. And this is where it goes down to the heart of the issue, is where citizen data, when there's a lack or absence of official data, we as civil society have a critical role to play and how to monitor human rights violations. So that's why we work with organizations like APT, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, on providing support to our organizations, our members, on how to monitor these violations, capture them, record them, and document them and use them for research, and as well as briefs and in front of the UN, and providing what we call shadow reporting as well. And they are very, very critical to the advocacy part as well. So I think in two ways, it is possible when you don't have membership actually, or where civil society is shrinking in those countries or cannot register. And a great example here is, let's go back to the screen, sorry. Where you've got people like Shadi, who's doing great work in Iran, and you've got Iroquois as well as other organizations present and working with other civil society organizations to capture that and mainstream the issue into the human rights discourse in that country as well. And then the second part is capturing that, building your capacity to capture those human rights violations as well. Thanks.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. C'est une question complexe. Je vais essayer de faire une réponse courte qui ne sera forcément pas complètement satisfaisante. Je m'en excuse d'avance. Vous avez utilisé le terme modèle pour la ville de Genève. Je préfère utiliser le terme pionnier parce que pour être modèle, il faut encore faire beaucoup de travail. La question de la sécurité dans les centres d'asile est extrêmement préoccupante, y compris en Suisse, y compris à Genève. Comme vous le savez, la Suisse est un pays fédéral, l'organisation de l'asile est relativement complexe et les centres dépendent directement du national, de l'État fédéral. J'ai bon espoir que maintenant que l'État fédéral s'est enfin doté d'une cellule LGBTIQ+, au sein du Bureau fédéral de l'égalité, on va pouvoir dialoguer de manière beaucoup plus concrète pour faire avancer ces dossiers au niveau national et fédéral. L'autre levier, c'est aussi au niveau de l'État de Genève, avec à travers la commission consultative qui a reçu déjà Asile LGBTIQ+. On a déjà discuté avec l'Hospice général qui gère aussi ces centres de ces aspects-là. Donc, il y a du travail qui est en cours. Maintenant, j'ai tout à fait conscience que il y a encore beaucoup de travail à faire et qu'il y a une certaine urgence parce qu'évidemment, on parle là de sécurité au quotidien. Moi, je vous encourage vraiment à documenter au maximum les situations et à les faire remonter à travers soit Asile LGBTIQ+, directement à la ville de Genève, à l'État de Genève. Et ça a été dit beaucoup aujourd'hui, ce qui nous manque, c'est des informations, des datas concrètes. Je sais que ça peut paraître frustrant de parler de data quand en même temps, on doit assurer la sécurité, qu'il y a des personnes qui sont atteintes dans leur intégrité ou qui sont en danger. Très concret, mais c'est le seul levier qu'on a, c'est de faire remonter les datas et de documenter au maximum. Donc, merci pour ce travail-là, merci aux organisations aussi de le faire. On y travaille, on a conscience de la taille des enjeux. Ce qui ne veut pas dire qu'on ne fait rien, mais il y a encore beaucoup de travail à faire. Une réponse un peu probablement insatisfaisante, mais on y veille. Merci.